Okay, so we're back after a bit of just connecting now that we had a new person in the room. Um, and I told you I was going to ask you to say something again. It was about because we got on the topic of Nadja mentioned. Is that how your name is pronounced, by the way?
Yeah, that's exactly how it is.
Okay,
Nadja.
cool. So Nadja was telling you that we were talking about sort of the schizophrenic nature of the call that I had Saturday, and then you said something about fragmentation.
Yeah, I said it just made me think of like it brought up the idea of fragmentation and integration. Like I suppose what I saw was pieces fragmenting out and then coming back together into integration or reintegration. But then after the reintegration, something was present that hadn't been there at the beginning of the fragmentation.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. That makes me think of like the whatever force caused the fragmentation contained the seed for what must have come back. There must be something there. That's interesting. And it's exciting. It gives me a lot of hope for next Saturday. So thanks for that.
Say that again. Whatever caused the fragmentation was the seed for the reintegration.
That's just the image I get when Claire said that because Claire said it almost as a thing you can depend on. And so that makes me think, well, if you can depend on it, they must be related somehow. And if you have a group and then they fragment and they come back together and there's something more, the more must have come from something related to the fragmenting. And so, yeah, that's just where, who knows if it's right, but it sounds cool anyway.
Yeah.
Gives hope as well.
Yeah.
And I guess that saying that is probably very directly related to the experience that I just had. I mean, it's a way that I think anyway. As a psychotherapist, I think a lot in terms of parts and the fragmentation of self and how we can understand ourselves as a collection of fragmented parts that have become fragmented through necessity, survival necessity, and like each of those parts holds a treasure in a lot of ways. Like I'm obliged to think in that way. I believe that it's true. And like no fragmented part is actually not essential to the health of the whole. It's always holding something essential. And when those parts are brought back into relationship with one another and into dialogue with one another, not only do they bring their own treasure with them, but now that they're working in community, now that they're working in connection with one another, there's even more that comes. Like as they combine their treasures combine into all these new treasures that didn't exist before because they were held separately.
That's lovely. And I agree. I do think there's a lot of truth in modeling humans as fragmented personalities, and the more we can internally communicate, then sort of we become unified. And yeah, that's cool. I like it.
Well, and I said to somebody today, and I absolutely meant it, that and I think that this is really what Jung was talking about a long time ago, which is that if we really want to change the world, then we have to integrate ourselves. We have to get into dialogue internally between all parts of ourselves. All parts of ourselves have to be brought to the table. So I have to find the liar and the racist and the murderer and the hateful person in myself and enter into dialogue with them and experience reconciliation. And if I cannot do that even inside myself, then there's really very little hope of me doing that with my romantic partner or my business colleague, let alone with, somebody from, a different group, of a different identity group, or between nations or species. It's like if I can't do that inside myself. And so that kind of inclusive dialogue between the alienated parts of the self inside me is kind of a necessity, really. But also it can flow back the other way, that as I learn to do that with other people, it also informs me in terms of how I can start to do that within myself. I realize the joy that can come out of that unexpected dialogue.
Yeah. And maybe when you talk to somebody and you say you get better at meeting parts of yourself, and maybe that's partially due to you see something in somebody else, and then you in your private life, oh, I recognize that in me. Yeah. And maybe it's kind of both of like learning something from them, but also it's already in you. So yeah.
A recognition, absolutely. No, and I've just adjusted my theory there, in which it's bi-directional for sure. Like the more I do it on the outside means I can do it on the inside, and the more I do it on the inside means the more I can do it on the outside.
Yeah, nice. We definitely are built for dialogue, I think that's for sure.
Yeah.
And in you talking about this fragmentation and coming together, I see the parallel to the open space or to the dialogos thing as well. It's kind of like, the fragments start to kind of, you were saying, like when the person comes together, not only is this bit in existence, but when it merges, something new happens. And that's the hope about open space as well. And it sounds like of the Dialogos groups as well.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely my vision for our open space, Nadja. I mean, as you know, and also this idea that we can come together with a question, like a question is fertile enough. We don't, and by engaging in that dialogue, new questions are born, and also answers start to get born. So we don't have to wait until we feel like we have answers. We just have to get into dialogue and start asking the questions.
Yeah. There's so much of this popping up. Either it's, I can't really tell, either it's suddenly popping up all around me right now, or I just looked in the right place and it's all there, and it was there for a while. I definitely think it's at least some of the first, but also I know that it had a life of its own before I dove in. And anyway, it's very exciting. I've already heard of like 3 or 4 or 5 projects that are just on the technical side. So there's open spaces. You mentioned QiQo chat, which is another thing. And then I don't remember them now, but some people I've talked to before, like they're popping up all over the place. A lot of weird synchronicities too. Like the metaphor of the campfire is everywhere in this space. Everybody's saying it and using it as a really rich metaphor. And it is really rich too. I love that. And it's very exciting. So in the open spaces, I kind of want to dig more into that. I'm curious about that. Let me see if I can just repeat back how you described it to me, and maybe sorry.
And then Claire can probably add things.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So it sounds like almost a container for Zoom or Zoom-like conversations, but you're not just in the conversation, you're in this bigger thing, and you can enter and leave conversations. And it also sounds like it's not just that at a technical level, but there's also some kind of suggested culture and suggested kind of ways of behaving to facilitate a certain kind of you said butterflies and bees and cross-pollination and that whole thing, which I really like. I mean, I love, again, it's for me, I'm just so into this idea about collective intelligence. And if you could have not just a static group of people, but a whole room full of people and they're moving around, then you have neurons that are free to make these connections without having to worry about who's the neighbor and who's not the neighbor. And very exciting stuff. So
creating a giant human brain.
That's right.
Or human brains.
A meta-human.
A meta-human. Oh my God! You said you heard it here first, folks. You trademark the shit out of that logo.
Meta person might be better while I'm trademarking, because human is like kind of tied to our biology, but person is a bit more general. So maybe meta person.
Meta being, which
meta being.
We already have that. That's like planet Earth, whatever.
Right.
Like all of us working as one. That would be the goal, right?
Yeah. The hive.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Claire, did I miss anything, or well, tell me what excites you about the open spaces, or what I missed, or
No, it sounds like you've really understood it. The way I heard, so basically the guy who's set up QiQo Chat, which is the sort of the tech platform, is an open space technology enthusiast and facilitator. And open space technology, when the word technology is slightly misleading, because it was never really anything to do with IT to start with. In fact, it was it was people technology, and it was about a different way of engaging people in a flat structure in problem solving and decision making, and specifically when something needed collective intelligence and was urgent. And this was a way of people coming together in a hierarchically flat structure to problem solve.
Very cool.
And it was created by a guy, and I say created, and I think he would probably use the term created loosely. So there's a guy called Harrison Owen who wrote the first book, Open Space Technology, and I think he was really, really deeply informed by non-Western, non-European culture, and a lot by a kind of tribal intelligence and tribal methodology, which, and now we're back to campfire and the very different approach to community from kind of business type community, which is traditionally hierarchical and inside a building, and this was very much about kind of being outdoors, or literally, I think, as well as anything else. And so I don't know that Harrison Owen would say that he created it, but certainly he coined the phrase open space technology, and a set of principles really grew out, which were his principles, or he named them, which is what I guess Nadja's been speaking about, kind of butterflies and bees, and the law of 2 feet, which is, if you're not still interested or you're not still contributing, then get the hell out and go somewhere that fires you up. And then one of the other principles, I can't remember them all off the top of my head, is whoever comes is the right people, whoever shows up is the right people.
That's very good.
And if that's you on your own, then you trust that either now is not the right time for this idea, or I'm to sit with myself and to meditate and dialogue with myself about this, or there's somewhere else that I want to go join in, and I can free myself of this obligation, this responsibility to lead this at this particular moment in time, and I'm going to go contribute somewhere else. And so there are these principles that really kind of taken on trust, that this is what these principles will generate the most fruitful outcome and the most fruitful solution. And then QiQo Chat really is built by somebody who is passionate about OST, about open space technology, as the technological, the IT solution to open space. And of course, I'm sure I don't know, I haven't spoken to Lucas since we did the induction with him, Nadja, but I can only imagine that right now his work must be just like through the roof, introducing people to the online OST space. There are others that have been created, as I understand it, other attempts to create an online OST experience, but certainly QiQo Chat is one of them. And what he calls it is a Zoom wrapper. So it's kind of Zoom plus, and it holds the group within sort of the principles of OST, and you get you get the visual sense of people gathered, so you can see the number of people who are there, and everybody has their little avatar, so you know that there's a whole bunch of people there live with you. And then you can see the array of breakout rooms down the side, and you arrive in the central space. And one of the sexy things about it is that you have what he calls an ether pad or an ether dock, which is perched in the middle of the screen. So you fire up Zoom, and so you've got you arrange your panels, so you can see all the people and you can hear everybody on one side of your screen, but then you've got the ether dock, and it's live for everybody to type into. And so your facilitator will say, okay, so let's all just take a moment to say who we are and put our email address in, and so everyone types at a different bullet point. And that's in terms of harvesting. This is how harvest happens. So at some point, and there's cute functionality where, for instance, when we did the induction, Lucas would say, okay, so what are the things that you guys want me to cover today? And then he'll open up a table, and everyone takes a different line in the table, and you say, you know what, this is my question, and someone will say, this is my question, and you see it all populate. And then he just literally, he copies, pastes, dumps it in one of the command boxes, and that populates automatically all the breakout rooms. So now there's a breakout room for every topic, and then you just decide which breakout room you want to go in.
Very cool.
And then you go into that breakout room, and then you join that Zoom, and it automatically takes you into a separate Zoom meeting.
Wow.
And then you can set a timer on it, so it will then bump you back in to the plenum when you get to the end of that time. So it's, you know, we can go more into kind of the way open space, they call it a marketplace. So you have a marketplace at the beginning, everyone says these are the things that I want to talk about, I'm going to grab this room at this time, and then you get a chance to see who's offering what in the marketplace. Okay, I want to go to that one, I want to go to that one, I want to go to that one. They all appear in the breakout rooms, and then off you go, you're off to the races. You've got 6, 7, 100 breakout rooms running at the same time, and people go to whichever one they feel called to go to, and each one has its own ether pad. Where, and usually I think the protocol usually is that if you advertise the topic that's the one that you feel called to talk about, your only obligation is that you're responsible for the harvest.
And you can totally devolve that as well. Like in the one that I was in on Thursday, the guy sort of said, oh, does anybody feel drawn to doing the harvest? And then 2 or 3 people volunteered, and so he didn't even do that.
So that's just keeping the ether pad updated with what people are saying and the ideas that people have come up with, and people who've committed to actions and inspiring ideas or quotes, or, you know, the harvest is, you know, really what, like the output, whatever everybody's talked about that's been captured.
Okay, that's really interesting, and that word really grabs my attention, because one of the hard questions that we are wrapping our heads around is, how do you massage what we're doing into something in the end? So, and it sounds like, you know, it's funny. I've been saying that I'm excited for how the technology will evolve, but hearing you speak, it's like, oh shit, it already has evolved. And I need to go check out Open Spaces and QiQo Chat. So, okay, well, let me ask you, I'd love to talk more about a lot of this, but first, just for the action-oriented, how do I go and do Open Spaces? What is, I mean, like, or QiQo Chat, like if I wanted to, probably won't spring this on the group this week, but let's say I want to change next Saturday and say, look, we're not going to use Zoom directly, we're going to use Open Spaces. What is the,
So I think the best thing to do is just link you up with Lucas, which is what Harrison did with us. He just said you have to go and speak to Lucas because he runs QiQo Chat. So we will link you up by email. I will link you up by email with Lucas. And then I think pretty regularly, maybe even like once a week, Lucas is running a free, just everybody piles in who's interested, and he'll give you an orientation to the way it works, and he'll show you exactly what he showed us about the way it works, and then you're just free to go set up an account.
Okay, that sounds great. Is it in any beta state, or is it like anybody can join?
Anybody can join.
Okay, yeah.
Anybody can join. Yeah, and people are running like 1 day, 2 day, 3 day long company conferences on this. So, you know, it's been going for a while now, and people are using it. People, experienced OST facilitators are using it, you know, kind of day in, day out, as far as I can tell. Okay. Cool. With some very it can be run in a very simple way, and it can also be run in quite a sophisticated way with agendas and timetables, and it's already quite sophisticated. Very
cool. That's very exciting.
So I will link you up after this meeting.
Yeah, please.
It's very cheap as well, because I think it's just a kind of it's not running it to make money. So, and the thing is, because they have like thousands of Zoom rooms, obviously, but you only pay for the portion of it that you use. So it's a per user per hour kind of fee, and it's like 60 cents, or I don't know what it is.
Okay.
So it's quite economical, because you're only paying for that bit of Zoom that you're actually using, and because there's so many people using it, it works out really well.
Yeah, that's very cool. Geez, I don't even know what to ask next, but I do want to hear more. Does anything come to your guys' mind that you'd like to share more about the Open
definitely.
Spaces?
I'm just going to put on my light.
Okay.
You know, it's getting dark. Well, I'd like to kind of make the link to why I contacted you.
Okay.
In the first place, which was just my curiosity. And I don't know like how much of an idea you have about this project, like mine and Claire project at this point. And I was just curious whether you were drawn in and wanted to kind of be part of the QiQo thing, and the kind of because I think it is this flat structure, and at the same time I'm realizing that it's important to give people a very good introduction, to host people really well on the QiQo platform. And yeah, and I just wondered if you were interested in kind of brain bashing and working out ways to harvest to host really meaningful conversations, a bit like exactly what you were saying. That is your current, what you're engaged with. Like how do we make a conversation be really fruitful? And that's not something that the technology alone is gonna give us.
Right.
I think there needs to be some clever feeling into it and thinking into it, because what we want with it, what we want to be the outcome of those conversations is that mandate that I was telling you, that global citizens charter, where we kind of can then post that in media and press and petition governments and, you know, whatever stakeholders.
Right. And I would imagine with that kind of document, you would need it to really come from everyone. And so I can see how that, yes, that brings you into the problem. Well, how do you get an answer from everybody? And that's exactly the question I'm focused on. And I'm so gleeful to be able to sink my teeth into already, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I'd love to sort of cross-pollinate, I suppose, the projects. And I'm already sold on trying out the Open Spaces platform, and I don't think I'm overstepping my bounds to predict that the people that I'm talking to, this community of, well, there's 100 emails in the list, and then I said like 30 or 40 people showed up. I'm sure some of them, it sounds really cool to me. I'm sure I would not be alone in wanting to try that out. Yeah, and then this video will go up too, so I'm sure that some people will see that and see it that way. But yes, anyway, that's just a long way of saying yes, that sounds very cool, and I'd love to do that.
Great. And would it be possible to be part of one of your calls as well?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So they're open. I mean, I don't think we're ready to like advertise it and like grab out for more people, but it's definitely open. I think the only requirement we really have is just that you're capable of authentic communication. And yeah, so definitely for sure. I'll make sure after the recorded session, I guess we'll trade a bunch of links, because I want to put a bunch of stuff in the notes as well. So yeah, we'll get you in there for sure. It's Saturday at noon UTC is our time that we do it. But there's also a lot of things that are popping up adjacent as well. So yeah.
Great. And there's something that I wanted to jump in there and say as well about the importance of somewhat experienced facilitation, and actually in particular because of the thing that you just said then, Logan, about participants being capable of authentic communication. One of the things that has been really clear to me in my vision for the work on the project that Nadja and I are doing is that, I mean, on the one hand, I want 8 billion people involved in the conversation.
Right.
And necessarily, I want as many people, as many different kinds of people, whatever that means, involved in the dialogue. And some people will not be experienced at authentic communication or community held structures or empowered community decision making. It will be new to them. I really hope that we are not just going to be preaching to the already converted. I really want people from very rigid business, corporate, profit-driven mindsets involved in the conversation, welcomed, needed in the conversation. People who trade oil, I want them in the conversation. And a lot of the people who I want in these conversations, who I think we want in these conversations, will not be people who are used to self-organizing in these ways. They'll either be used to kind of I'm slightly pastiching, but they'll be used to kind of being quite dominant and leading, or they'll be used to not having a say. And I think it's really important that we have people who are experienced in navigating and encouraging and allowing and empowering people in these kind of dialogues to be present, especially at the beginning. You know, I think to start off with, maybe we hoped that everyone would just bundle in and they'd organize themselves, and at the same time it's really important, as Nadja said, that the first engagement is a nourishing, inspiring and positive engagement. And so I think there is going to be a need to have people on hand to just gently assist. And so the more people that we can engage who have a felt sense of what that means and what it requires and what it looks like, and some experience, is going to be really important.
Definitely. And I'm really glad you brought this up, because this has been on my mind, and I'm glad you've given me the opportunity to sort of dive into something. And that is that another way to sort of look at what you've just sort of painted is, what do you do when there's someone in the group who detracts from the experience? I mean, I think that's the more harsh way to put it. I think that's maybe just how I think of it. But there's a lot of thoughts that come up there. I mean, one thought is that if you can, before that becomes too much of a problem, if you can create culture and norms around it to where you have this certain kind of energy and momentum going on, then when the new people join, to some degree, they'll just kind of get swept along, and that's part of the solution. But I don't think we're there yet. This is so new, this process that we're trying to give birth to. But it is something that's going to have to come up pretty soon, I think. And I think that's why, as I said, we're not trying. I don't think anyone's too eager to expand the circle radically. And as I was saying, that video I mentioned earlier, Nadja, where they were talking about game B. I don't know if you've heard this game B terminology.
No.
Okay, well, it's a big subject to get into, but in the history of this game B, which that's the recent Rebel Wisdom videos, so I'll give that link to you guys as well. But they're talking about in the early stages, it kind of, these fissures appeared and it broke down. And one of the suggestions from one of the guys talking about this now in the past is, he said, it would have been better if we'd sort of gotten the core of processes to work that we could depend on it, and then explore outside of that. And so for me, I'm sort of like, the near term is what is a minimal core, like a bootstrap, a set of bootstrap functions that we can sort of at least tentatively put a box around and say, we don't touch this for now, and we play with everything else, and we can switch it up later. And I think part of that box, at least a few iterations from now, will have to be, how do we onboard people who don't have these skills? And that could be even the micro skill, for example, of if we're in a big call and someone is kind of just telling us about their lives when that's not the place for it, like, how do we be like, your turn is over, and then do we, do you criticize them? And then probably not, but maybe a little bit. So a lot of really difficult questions. And I think the reason I focus on it is because I kind of have a taste for the more difficult, darker questions. It's on my radar. I guess that's all I'll say for now. Yeah.
You're in really good company, Logan. I don't know whether, I have no idea how Nadja is going to take this, because I'm not a mind reader, but I would like to say that you're in the presence of a deeply experienced person in the form of Nadja when it comes to difficult conversations in community settings, and what successful navigation of that looks like and requires.
Is a good word.
So I'd say that you, when you're in the room with Nadja, you're in the room with someone who knows those waters.
Good.
Is that fair enough to say, Nadja?
Bless you. Yeah, and I guess those waters to me are always waters where I don't know. Like where I don't know the answer, and that's like a lot of it. So I really echo that thing of like having a bootstrap kind of structure that will hold us enough.
Mhm.
And then when the difficult person comes, that is also an honorable thing to engage with, you know, because that will be part of how we come up with a solution that includes everybody.
Right.
So but there's always that tension, and I think there is a lot to be said for skillful facilitation, and even the skillful facilitation can't remove it, and shouldn't. And also, with certainly, I suppose with this, with the QiQo chat thing, I'm sort of on the side of, actually, I don't want it to be, at the moment, I sort of think, I don't want it to become a place where people are being expertly facilitated, because then that's like a service that we're providing, but actually there might be value in a group struggling to work out how to work with a difficult element. Like there might be more learning in that. And the other thing is more like a providing a service thing, and probably, you know,
and I'd also say that there's a value for and we originally looked at QiQo, and then we went and looked at Sakoko. And when I was trying to set up a trial Sakoko platform, suddenly it came to me, oh, here's a room, because it's envisioned like a building with all these different rooms in it. And there was a building, and I just tagged it in the trial version as we're called the revelation to revolition, the team room. And I had this idea as well that and there's a function, I think, in QiQo chat where you can kind of like call somebody for help, but also kind of outside of hours as well. Like if somebody's leading an ongoing group focused on one particular bit of problem solving, like if that we are not necessarily there facilitating all the time, but you can come and say, look, we've got a bit of an issue, can I get some guidance? Or we could come and facilitate for a couple of sessions for them, or for the next bit of it. So there's almost like you can ring a bell and go, help, this is breaking down. And then there's enough people on hand, you know, either in real time or between sessions, that we can give any particular little pods a little bit of extra help, rather than it being all facilitated or zero facilitated.
Yeah, God, that's really lovely. And that also makes me think, like, part of the sort of like bootstrap equipment that people get equipped with could be something where you have like kind of like house rules or something like that. If you find it difficult, do these 5 steps, you know, like kind of,
and if you're still struggling, then ring the bell kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good idea for one of the bootstrap things. You could keep it like 3 rules, so it's easy to read too, you know, a few lines each. I like that. Yeah.
Just to say, folks, that I'm going to have to wrap up pretty soon.
Okay.
It's been a long day, and it's also my beloved partner's birthday, and I really need to go and have some dinner with him.
Okay, that's fine. I should go to bed. I'm actually very tired as well. But
oh my gosh, what is the time where you are?
It's not that late. But I didn't sleep well last night, so that's just. But I did. But I'm really glad I set up for this. This has turned out very well. Thank you both.
This is really exciting.
Yes, it's so exciting. I think I was saying earlier to Nadja that I find myself I put these videos out. I have this leadership role, but then otherwise I find myself falling very silent and not expressing too much. And I think part of the reason is because I'm just fascinated watching it happen. I'm kind of awestruck, you know, like it's almost like an explosion. It's a good one, but it's like it's going so fast I couldn't put my arms around it. And like to try to express too much and put too many definitions on, no, just better to, like, you know, wait and bask, and then wait for the time of action, you know, to strike me. And then, so that's where I'm at. And it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. I'm so excited.
I'm going to say something slightly transcendent now.
I love it.
Which is that, oh God, I'm going to sound like such a wanker. I reckon that's how God feels.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it?
Like you create, like you like, You blow
Yeah.
on the fire, and then you can't get your arms around what happens next, and you're just
Yeah.
awestruck, like you're just watching this thing go and go and go, and mostly you're just sort of in awe of it. There isn't anything to say. You couldn't possibly put words to it. It's, you know, God schmod. It's about creation, like, and
Right.
I think that that's exactly the point, is that starting these dialogues, it's an act of creation, and you have absolutely no ability to predict what's going to happen. Like, that's the point.
Yes.
Is that you want something to happen that you can't possibly predict or engineer,
Yeah.
because then that's the right thing has happened. And so that makes complete sense to me, that one, you're having a slightly sort of transcendent spiritual experience watching it happen, because that is the nature of the universe. And also because how on earth do you put that into words?
Yeah. Yeah. And I also noticed you blew on a fire. So there comes that fire metaphor again. Of course, I said explosion, so maybe it's not too surprising, but yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
thank you for sharing that, because that also gives me a lot of hope that if you hit the right nerve at the right time, then people are going to hear that call and they're going to come, and there's not that much you're still doing. You know, you're not drumming people together. You just
you just stood back watching, go, wow.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, and this is what I experienced, is that I didn't need to make myself do it. I was just thinking about it, and then the time came, which was this Rebel Wisdom Festival a little over a week ago, and I was like, this is it. And it wasn't even like I made the decision. It was like I was already, you know, striking the flint, or whatever part of the metaphor we want to tap into there. Yeah, I found myself making the decision.
Yeah.
Great. So will we, shall I link us up on email, and
yeah,
you can...
I'll stop the recording, and we can do a little bit of housekeeping real quick and just trade links and stuff.
Yeah, sure.